Hello, it is Tara Boothby, Soldier in Psychology, and today I'm going to continue our conversation on gaslighting. I'm going to talk about a type of communication that's just parallel to gaslighting, actually. And it's a term I hadn't thought about for over 10 years for sure, I think. And a client came in and used this term. I was like, oh, that's so good. But it's this idiom that we use, and it is called moving the goalposts. I don't know. Have you heard of this one? Moving the goalposts. This is a strategy in communication where somebody will change the rules of the relationship, the conversation, the plan, and it's to make a situation more difficult for somebody else. Now, that's an interesting tactic, and there's many times when this actually could definitely benefit somebody um, in a game. Like if you're playing hockey and all of a sudden you change the rules, it definitely can leverage an advantage for one team over the other. So sports is a great way to see how this manipulation of the rules can really impact to make things unfair conditions for another team. But we don't just do this in sports or politics. Politics is another place where we see this happen. Somebody just completely changes the rules. I don't know. Is that something that's been happening lately in politics? Maybe. But it is moving the goalposts to create advantage for one class of people or one class of person. Now, this is something that doesn't just happen in group settings. This is something that often actually happens in one-on-one relationships. So it could be at work. Is definitely something that we see. Many people who go on stress leave actually have endured experiences at work where somebody is moving goalposts, like a colleague or a boss. This is something that can happen in friends. And oftentimes when we see teens come in, it's actually that they're in these relationships where somebody keeps changing the rules of the relationship. That's pretty normal in adolescence. It's developmentally appropriate that teens go through these stages where they're trying to find themselves. And so they do move the goalposts, sometimes to bother a peer or friend, sometimes just because they're not quite sure of the rules. And so they're changing them and trying on different ways of being. But it hurts other people's feelings. That's normal. That's a great example of when goalpost moving can happen. Marriage is often a place where moving the goalposts is something that happens. It's not good. It is a signal that abuse may be happening in that relationship, in any relationship. If somebody keeps changing the rules to gain leverage or advantage over you, it's good to question, is this an emotionally safe, an emotionally stable relationship where I can maintain my own self-regulation? And parenting. Parenting is tough, right? Because we have to change the rules. Uh, it's and the children don't mean to move the goalposts, but they're always moving the goalposts. I will think of my own children, or when I talk to parents about parenting, which is a common thing that I address in therapy. That's one of my expertise. You kind of figure out your 4-month old, and then you have a week or two, and developmentally they change. They're not trying to change. They're not trying to drive us crazy, but their little ways of being keep developmentally changing. So how I parent my 4-year-old is different than how I parent my 6-year-old, which is different than how I parent my 8-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 24-year-old. And there's a bunch of parents in listening and sort of saying, oh yeah, yeah. And we have to love and accept that they're not trying to change the rules by developmentally changing, but the rules are always changing. And it gets us wobbly, and that's where parenting fails can happen. But sometimes as parents, we move the goalposts. We change the rules. We decide that what we agreed to offer a child, we're going to take back. And you can really see in those parenting moments, if you're paying attention, when we do the unfair thing of changing the expectation, that the child gets anxious and they're out of their window of tolerance. So why do people move the goalposts? Again, it's a power move, and that's the risk of abuse, just like gaslighting is a power move. And gaslighting's goal is to create the attention in the other person where the other person doubts themselves and the other person wonders about their own sanity or feels responsible. Like that's some of the nuances with gaslighting. Moving the goalpost is a power move that is advantageous to me, the person who's moving the goalpost. If I am, I hope I don't. I mean, I think we all do at some point, right? We're people. But it's oftentimes the motive is to, again, to gain advantage, to dismiss another person. Moving the goalpost is a consequence. I'm mad at you, so I'm going to change the rules and then we'll see how you deal with it. It's also to gain requirement. So if I keep changing the rules, I'm in charge of the rules, then I can require you. There's a sense of I'm required to follow the lead of the person. Excuse me. It's flu season in Alberta. But that is so often it. Somebody who comes in and talks about a person who's changing the rules in their life feel powerless. They feel required. It feels like a demand, and it doesn't feel rational or fair. So it's confusing for somebody who's experiencing having the rules change. You know, we just all of a sudden change the name of somebody or something or someplace, and everybody finds it quite strange, but there's a sense of required. I am required. I just have to go with this decision, which is strange. But oftentimes, when the rules are being changed, when the goalposts are being moved, there is this sense of like just going along with what's happening. It's the same thing with gaslighting. It takes a while for people to realize that when the rules are being changed, it's not fair, it's not appropriate, it's abuse. And yet it takes a while for us to realize this. So that's okay. If you're listening to this whole gaslighting series and you're like, why did it take me so long to understand? That's normal. It is really normal to take some time to see it. The good thing is that we start to see it, and we start to see our own flawed behavior, whether that is we are submitting to abusive situations or we are accidentally participating and we are being inconsistent and we are trying to maintain power and control by never letting other people really know what's coming next. So there's ways that we might do this moving the goalposts, and there's ways that we may tolerate it. And the truth is, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, is our window of tolerance. These type of tactics, gaslighting and moving the goalposts, any sort of hint of abusive, dominant behavior. The real thing is that the person who is receiving these types of unacceptable communication is their window of tolerance is being challenged. So our window of tolerance is the place where we feel regulated, the place where things feel measurable and manageable, the place where we can have a positive view of self and a positive view of others. When somebody is, trying to cause us to second guess ourselves, or, maintaining a behavior or communication that you won't understand what's coming next, it really gets us outside of our window of tolerance. And outside of our window of tolerance is dysregulation. Outside of our window of tolerance, sometimes we say our lid is flipped. So when we're above it, when we're in this manic or anxious, hyper place, our lid is flipped and our adrenaline is going and our brain is like working a little bit too hard. And prolonged experiences where our lid is flipped, I'm out of my window of tolerance in this hyper, that's what the language that we use, we call it hyper place. That's when we run the risk of like adrenal fatigue, burnout, fatigue, PTSD, acute stress reaction, those types of syndromes start to show up because it's not good for us to have our lid flipped. And that's why people, when they've been in these abusive relationships, they've been truly gaslit. They have truly had experiences of somebody continually move the goalpost. They can develop PTSD. Relationship trauma is trauma. And I mean, I think this just makes sense. Now, we can also fall out the bottom of our window of tolerance into this hypo place, this more depressed place, this more lethargic or apathetic. And that's a different category. Sometimes I'll see it, and I'm always curious what colleagues might say. I'm always curious what Lisa might say, because she's more of a diagnostic psychologist than I am. That hypo place, often what I see when somebody just falls out of the bottom of our window of tolerance is it becomes categorized as like a treatment resistant syndrome. So treatment resistant depression, treatment resistant anxiety. Sometimes the real personality disorder stuff can be either. I mean, don't even go there, Tara. That's so much. But what I'm really saying is it's dangerous to be outside of our window of tolerance. When we're outside of our window of tolerance, we can lose our footing, we get wobbly, we have communication errors, we're in our fight, flight, freeze, fawn space. And so that's when we are at risk of doing harm to ourselves or others, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, neurologically. Those are the things that happen when we're outside of our window of tolerance too frequently or consistently. We all step out of our window of tolerance from time to time. So the big thing is, first off, if you're concerned that you might have a bad behavior of moving goalposts, you're here thinking about that, and good for you. May we all be mindful of our potential flaws and faults, and may we all be able to look back on our past and see the good and the bad, and to evaluate so that we can continue to heal forward into self-betterment, into a better place of positive view of self, positive view of others, and positive sense of spirituality is my bias. But ultimately, it's really nice to feel good in a very soulful place. It's the benefit of good psychology. And if you are somebody who is enduring this behavior and you're wondering, like, boy, that makes a lot of sense for me. I think that I've been gaslit a lot. I think that I've had the goalposts moved on me a lot. Seek help, consult with somebody, try to figure out if you actually are in an abusive cycle with somebody, and if you need to consider changing that relationship or ending that relationship. Unfortunately, there's a time where we say goodbye. And people who continually try to have power and leverage over others are often not emotionally safe people to be with. So no matter our flaws and faults, whether we participate in cruelty towards others or we tolerate cruelty, or a variety of both, because usually we are a variety of both, the important thing is that we are seeing the truth of who we are. And it's not about changing other people. It's about caring for our own emotional safety within. Our positive view of self is essential to a positive view of others, and our accountability to notice our poor behavior and to seek changed behavior. Whatever that means for you. So we don't have to tolerate people being cruel to us. We don't have to attend every fight that we are invited to. And learning how to live with peace and love is not fluff, and it's not easy. But it's really helpful, because when we trust that we belong in the same heart of love as everybody else, when we seek and pursue peaceful living, we can be better accountable to see the mistakes we've made in the past, or the mistakes that have been done to us, and to evoke meaning and change for ourselves. And that's that spiritual recovery the beautiful soulfulness that is the goal of good psychology. All right, well, I'm glad you're here. And I hope you guys are staying as healthy as possible. It's really gross out there in Alberta right now. Like, it's shocking. It's been like -30 for 3 weeks. How are all these germs still alive? So stay healthy. If you're not, try to rest and try to remedy and take care of yourself. Peace and love.